This is First Person, NCPR's monthly interview show about arts, culture, and life in the North Country. I'm Mitch Teich. I don't know about you, but I have spent a lot more time under a throw blanket than I expected to this early in the fall, sometimes an electric blanket even. And there's a quilt on the wall that's looking a little tempting. The View Center for Arts and Culture in Old Forge is preparing to welcome dozens of quilts for aesthetic purposes rather than warmth. The center, which is open for in-person visiting these days, is preparing to host its annual Quilts Unlimited exhibition, along with several related shows. The exhibit is a physical one, but 3 people involved in it joined me via Zoom recently. Heather Caufield runs visual arts and exhibits at View. Claire Oehler is a longtime organizer of the quilt exhibit, and Travis Kiefer is View's marketing director. Claire Oehler explained why quilting is an important part of the Art Center's mission.
The quilting is another form of art. And I think one of the things that View does well is present many different forms of art, different media. I'm thrilled that we expose the public to fiber art because it is art, and I think people are realizing that.
Was that not always the case?
I think it depends on where you are. Some places sort of look at quilts as grandmother's loving touch things. We do not. We appreciate it for the art value, the craft value, the structure. We just believe in raising the quality too of the quilts and presenting it to the public, and we seem to get very good feedback every year. There's kind of an equal mix between what we consider traditional quilts. Log cabin quilts are the ones that are most common, people will relate to best, and art quilts. Art quilts tend to be, but not strictly, they tend to be smaller, although we have had queen size art quilts here, so it's hard to say. But that's good. The variety is wonderful.
Well, and is there a certain abstract nature that the art quilts have that maybe the more traditional quilts don't?
Yes and no. They tend to follow the same rules, if you will, but they are freer in the way they are expressed. You know, the rules are stretched and bent a bit.
I wonder if there's a comparison to poetry, like iambic pentameter versus free verse a little bit.
You're tough. Maybe.
I gather the Quilts Unlimited exhibition actually has several components to it, so I guess it's probably important for us to hear what comprises the exhibition as a whole.
Yeah, I was going to actually talk a little bit about how there's different categories within the exhibition. So kind of like what Claire was mentioning, there's art quilts, and then there's wall quilts, and then bed quilts. So there's different categories. So we're getting a bunch of different fiber artists working in different techniques, which I think is really neat for this exhibition. And also during this time, we also have some other fiber-related exhibits that we have on display at the same time, which I think is pretty neat.
Right. There's a non-juried exhibit called Flying Geese, which struck me as a pretty interesting. There's kind of a historical significance to that pattern, correct?
Yes, there is. And the whole genre, if you will, was started, I want to say 4 years ago or 5 years ago. We started seeing many more art quilts entered into the exhibit, and we had some not necessarily positive feedback from it. People were looking more for the traditional. And so at that time, we started something called a Keeping with Tradition exhibit as part of the overall exhibit. And it focuses each year on one particular traditional pattern. And we invite quilters to enter a quilt. They tend to be smaller, expressing their particular focus on what that pattern exhibits. Now, I've seen a couple of the entries this year, and they're quite different from each other, and in my mind, they're quite exciting.
And it's tricky because radio is an audio medium and quilts are a visual art form, but can you kind of explain the significance of the flying geese pattern?
Absolutely. It's composed, each of the flying geese blocks are made up of 3 triangles. The main triangle is the largest, and the longest line is across the bottom, if you can picture that. And then there's 2 side triangles. The main triangle is the geese. The 2 side ones are the sky. This is the original interpretation. And it portrays the geese flying north, if you will. It's also been connected to the Underground Railroad because quilts would be stationed along their route from the south through the north to Canada. And they always indicated the direction that the slaves should go, north. That was the direction that the smallest point of the big triangle was facing. So, but people take that off in many, many different directions.
There's another component of the exhibit of, I guess they're 4x12 pieces. These are dimensions, and they're works that are taller than they are wide, but they're not all that large in general. What do the artists get from these limitations, or maybe they're not limitations, maybe they're influences? But what do you get from a 4x12 piece that you don't get from the more traditional square quilt?
Okay, the limitation in and of itself is a challenge. It is pretty much strictly art quilts. And because it's an art quilt, they tend to be embellished with either decorative stitching or beadwork or buttons or whatever you can think of. We've had some amazing pieces. We had the first 4x12 exhibit here last year. We had 34 pieces, and instantly in the first day sold 12 pieces, 14 pieces.
Yeah, around there.
They were very well received. So we are going to have another 4x12 exhibit this year.
Yeah, I think they're great for our viewers too. Sometimes, with a quilt, it's harder to purchase and have a spot for it, where the 4x12 is a really, small size, and you can kind of fit it almost anywhere. So
Almost anywhere.
it gives our viewers another chance, if they're interested in fiber work, to take something home with them.
One of the key parts of the story, and one we haven't really even mentioned to this point, is that this is a physical exhibit. The View Center is actually, it's open to the public, which gives people something other than a virtual cultural experience.
Yes, we're going to have a both in-person exhibition, and just like our other shows, we've been trying to move forward to doing a portion online for those visitors who still cannot make it, to view. For example, our last show, we did a video by both of our judges talking a little bit more about their experience and whatnot. Looking into doing a reception as well in person, with definitely following all guidelines and whatnot, which makes it a little tricky because you're not getting that personal touch with talking to the artist as much as you'd like to, but we're still trying to do everything that we can when we're still following guidelines and everything.
Right. Virtual exhibits have become or virtual only exhibits have become so ubiquitous in just a few short months. Do you find you're having to go out of your way to let people know that they can actually visit?
Yeah, that was a big struggle when we started, when we reopened in late June, because we did, I think, 4 exhibit openings online over the course of the 6 months that we were quarantined. So trying to get people back in the door was a challenge, but it was the messaging that we had to send out, but it was also comfort level. So that's where our virtual exhibits really kind of helped us. It gave the people that normally would come in a level of comfort, that they could still see the art when we brought it to them. And it also helped us in terms of our limitations as a building, because we cannot have the number of people that we're used to at one point. So right now our exhibition gallery can hold 20 people. Usually, for like the watercolor show that we have right now, usually the opening has 300 people. So it's hard to, go from 300 to 20 all of a sudden. So the virtual exhibits have really helped us to kind of funnel people a little bit, so they can still see the exhibit while not necessarily cramming themselves into a space, making it unsafe for everyone around them.
How challenging has it been to actually present these exhibitions online? I mean, it's not just as simple as taking a picture and uploading it.
Yeah, so the first exhibition we did was in April.
Yeah, the beginning or late March, beginning of April.
Yeah, so we had a show called the Central Adirondack Art Show. We decided very early, let's figure out how we can do something. And so from there, something turned into, well, how can we make it as much as a gallery as possible? How can we interact with our people, our community, so it felt like they were still here? So we went through a lot of different iterations of what we were going to do, and how we were going to make it feel as personal as we could, and not just be another, like you said, more pictures on the internet. So we started with the gallery guide. We had a couple walkthroughs of the actual gallery. We were hoping it gave the viewer a sense of a first-person walkthrough of our exhibition that was set up. And then we included gallery views, so you could just look at the pictures, blow them up a little bit, see some of the more intricate details. But it has been definitely a challenge on trying to figure out what the best way to do that and how to keep our community engaged, in a time when things are drastically different.
Well, and as you're preparing this Quilts Unlimited exhibition, I wonder, do you think that the COVID pandemic was either an inhibiting factor for people who practice quilting or one that gave them more time to do it?
I believe it gave them more time. On the other hand, some of us procrastinated and put it off. But the majority of people that I know and have spoken to felt that they were able to accomplish more. So I think in the end, that part of it worked out fine.
Well, so you have been involved in this exhibit, as you say, for many years. What makes you excited about it that it's been a part of your life for as long as it has?
I've been involved in quilting for a very long time. I owned a quilt shop for 19 years before I moved here. And I'm still excited about quilting because every quilt you do is new. And I think quilters in general feel this way. Every quilt is new. You're using different fabrics, and there's an amazing selection of fabrics available. Different colors, different concepts, different techniques. One of the things that I personally will miss for the opening, when we usually have a crowd in here that first Friday night, is the energy in the room and the excitement that people get from sharing their quilts and looking at other people's quilts and talking among themselves. But we'll get that online. It all works out.
Well, Claire and Travis and Heather, thank you so much. Best of luck with this exhibit and with your work. And thank you for sharing the story with us.
Thank you. Mitch.
Yeah, thank you, Mitch.
Claire Oehler is the longtime organizer of the Quilts Unlimited exhibition at the View Center for Arts and Culture in Old Forge. Travis Kiefer is View's marketing director, and Heather Caufield directs visual arts and exhibits for the center. The 2020 Quilts Unlimited exhibition runs October 3rd through November 7th. You'll find a link to more information at ncpr.org/firstperson.